Top stories from around our region. BC conservation officers and RCMP are searching for a grizzly bear that attacked a school group on a field trip on the Central Coast. It left 2 people in critical condition and 2 others with serious injuries, among them children in grades 4 and 5. In a video statement released this morning, the BC Conservation Officer Service described what happened.
The group had stopped along a trail near the community when a grizzly bear emerged from the forest and attacked. Teachers successfully repelled the bear using pepper spray and a bear banger.
In a statement, the Newhawk First Nation praised the efforts of the teachers as heroic. 4 people were treated yesterday afternoon in Bella Coola's hospital before being transferred to Vancouver for further care. Paramedics treated 11 people in total at the scene. The regional district calls the attack unusual. Authorities say initial information suggests the grizzly bear may have been injured. They are asking everyone to clear the area until the animal has been located. And a 39-year-old man from BC is dead after a mining incident in Sparwood near the Alberta border. Elk Valley RCMP say it happened around 7 o'clock Thursday morning. Mine rescue teams searched for the man after the incident and were able to recover his body just this morning. Glencore Canada, which owns the mine, says the man was a contractor doing maintenance work at the site. The BC Coroner's Office is currently on scene along with the RCMP. CBC News has also reached out to WorkSafe BC and are waiting to hear back. Well, it has been 4 years since Abbotsford was devastated by a historic flood. During heavy rains in 2021, the Nooksack River south of the U.S. border overflowed and broke through dikes and flooded the Sumas Prairie. Now, Abbotsford's mayor says most of the flood recovery work is complete.
Happy to announce that all 300 projects have been done. We've got 4 that are in play that still need to be done, but we're coming close to the end of the recovery process.
Siemens says the reason it took 4 years includes permitting time and approvals, along with limited windows of construction due to fish habitats. But despite the amount of work completed, he says the city is not ready for the next big flood yet, one that's capable of taking out Highway 1. He says he's still waiting on completion of a multi-governmental flood strategy in the Sumas Prairie before work may be done to upgrade the highway. And more than 600 people died during BC's 2021 heat dome. And now a new study by Health Canada, Oxford, and the University of Bristol says nearly 100 of those were a result of human-caused climate change. The team compared today's climate to one without human emissions and to a warmer future. They also warned that the number could be even higher if a similar heat wave were to happen again. One environmental lawyer says that puts responsibility on governments to act fast.
BC is actually the #1 owner of oil, gas, and coal reserves, and yet just continues to make those available to fossil fuel companies, knowing that those will be burnt and make our climate crisis worse, and has no plans to deal with that. That's a major gap.
Environment Canada says heat waves are likely to get even more frequent across the country, including here in BC. And a reminder to anyone heading north to Whistler or the BC interior, winter tires are now mandatory on most BC highways. That means tires with either the mountain or snowflake symbol with mud or snow tires with at least a minimum tread of 3.5 millimeters. Police were checking vehicles yesterday on the Sea to Sky with more enforcement events planned. That's it for me for now. I'm Leanne Young. Coming up, BC Today, Amy Bell sitting in for Michelle Elliott. Don't go anywhere.
Good afternoon, happy Friday, and thank you for joining us. A grizzly bear attack involving students in Bella Coola has left 2 people critically injured and 2 others seriously hurt. We'll have the latest information on this terrifying incident. And a BC-Alberta pipeline has been the focus of some political back and forth this week. But how much say should BC have when it comes to provincial projects? And get your gardening questions ready to go because Brian Minter will be here to answer them. I'm Amy Bell, in for Michelle Elliott, and this is BC Today. And thank you for joining us on radio, TV, and live stream. You can call us now on our top story. What is BC's role in deciding the pipeline? Our number is 604-669-3733. You can also call 1-800-825-5950 or hit pound 690. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. First, though, let us continue to update you about yesterday's grizzly bear attack in Bella Coola in BC's Central Coast region. So far, we know 4 people are in hospital and 2 are in critical condition. Officials say the attack involved a group of school children and their teachers on a class outing. Our own Jessica Cheung joins us now with the very latest. Jess, tell us about this attack.
Yeah, Amy, this is just a devastating, shocking incident. It happened yesterday afternoon, just after 1:30 on a trail in Bella Coola, which is a remote community in BC's Central Coast. Now, a group of around 20 school children, students and teachers, kids in grade 4 and in grade 5 were out on a short afternoon field trip on a trail near the Bella Coola River, which is actually located right behind the school that these children attend. It's the Exalta School. The BC Conservation Officer Service says the group was having lunch by the river when a grizzly bear emerged from the forest and attacked. Multiple teachers intervened using bear spray and a bear banger, and they were successful in driving the bear away, but of course there were injuries.
Just shocking. I can't even imagine. And we know 11 people were injured, 4 were hospitalized. So what else can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Amy. So the Conservation Service has confirmed that 3 of those injured, hospitalized, were children, and 1 is an adult. Now, those 4 people were all airlifted out of that area, rushed to hospital. As you said, 2 of them critically injured, the other 2 in serious condition. Now, it's not clear who specifically is in critical or serious condition in terms of whether they were children or the adults. But 7 others were treated on scene at the time of the incident, but they weren't taken to hospital. So definitely a very devastating incident. Actually, there was a mom that spoke to the Canadian press saying that her son was there, and he's just traumatized by this event, as you can imagine. So the impact is really felt deep. Now, the school, Exalta Elementary, is an independent school run by the Newhawk Nation, which is the local First Nation in that area. The nation says that their staff followed all protocols. They were all well trained to be in that area. And so they called this quite unprecedented, this unprovoked attack. And the chair of the Central Coast Regional District, Jamie Kennedy, also agreed with this. She was shocked by this, and she said that this was completely unusual. And take a listen to what she had to say.
It sounds like everybody acted, with bears in mind. It sounds like it's just like a very unusual broad daylight sort of occurrence, and something that is unimaginable, really.
And Jess, what do we know about the bear that was involved?
Yeah, so this bear has yet to be found by conservation officers. So they've been working overnight last night to try to find this particular grizzly bear, to no avail. So of course the search continues today. Now, there is some new information from the Conservation Service about this particular bear. Inspector Kevin Van Dam is the person that speaks for BC Conservation Service, and here's what he had to say.
Preliminary information suggests the bear may have been previously injured. Captured mitigation techniques have been set to capture and evaluate the bear in question. We recognize this incident is distressing for the community. We are in close contact with the Newhawk Nation as our investigation continues.
Yeah, and residents, of course, are being asked to stay away from that area as this bear has yet to be captured. And the Newhawk First Nation are urging people to actually not go out looking for this bear, as of course that poses a danger to the people who decide to do that. Now, in terms of today and what officers are going to be doing today, they're going to continue to assess the area, collect evidence, and continue to speak with witnesses and victims, Amy.
And as you mentioned, just devastating for this community. What's the reaction been so far?
Well, there's been lots of reaction pouring in. You could just imagine how shocking, complete shock this is to the community, how devastating this is, a true gut punch to the people there. Now, the Newhawk First Nation says that the community is devastated, not only for the individuals, but also for the families that are involved. Now, the nation's elected chief called the teachers and the students that were there heroic. The school also expressing their gratitude to the teachers and the emergency crews that kind of protected the students during this incident. The school is closing their doors today, and they are also going to be putting up some supports for students and teachers that need it. Now, the BC Environment Minister, Tamara Davison, is expected to speak with media this afternoon, along with the BC Conservation Officer Service Inspector Kevin Van Dam, which we just heard from right there. I'm sure they'll be fielding lots of questions about this, and we'll, of course, be keeping an eye on it throughout the day, Amy.
Jess, thank you so much. Such an incredible story. And that is Jessica Cheung, our CBC reporter, and we will continue to follow this story for you as it develops on all CBC platforms, and we'll take you live to the press conference at 2 p.m. this afternoon. Present will be Tamara Davidson, Minister of Environment and Parks, and Kevin Van Dam of the BC Conservation Office Service. It is 12:12, and this is BC Today. And 4 years ago this week, an atmospheric river unleashed a catastrophic flood that swept through parts of the Fraser Valley. 5 people were killed, livestock and crops were wiped out, and there was damages worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The devastation in the Sumas Prairie is being remembered this week by those who lived through it. Albert and Rose Brecken were among those evacuated when the floodwaters rose, and they've been sharing their story with CBC News.
The trouble was, when it happened. So it's unbelievable the water came up that high as it did in 2 hours. Because that's when the police came by here at 6 o'clock in the morning and were calling for an evacuation. And the water was already up 2 feet downstairs.
It must have been scary for you guys.
Well, the thing is, we never thought of a flood being like that. So where do you go? What do you do first? We never even turned the power or the gas off, which we should have. You just was trying to get out. So it was a lot of, and then the stuff that was floating around in the water, there was wood everywhere floating. It was different.
And you couldn't see the road when we drove out. And there's ditches on each side. So we had to
when I drove out,
walk out ahead of him so he could stay on the road and not go in the ditch.
Because I was backing up out of here.
Tensions have been running high this week between the Premier of BC and Ottawa as news of secret conversations between Prime Minister Carney, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, and Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe that could include a new oil pipeline to BC's north coast that have come to surface. On Thursday, in an interview on CBC's Power and Politics program, Premier Eby exclaimed that he almost fell out of his seat when he heard Scott Moe say that he was part of these conversations and said he was completely unaware of these discussions. A senior government official told CBC News this week that the federal and Alberta governments were close to signing a memorandum of understanding on a new pipeline, which would allow some tanker traffic on the northern BC coast. So we're asking you, what is BC's role in deciding on this Alberta-BC pipeline? Call us now, just hit #690 on your cell phone, or you can call us at 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can email bctoday@cbc.ca or just leave a comment on our TikTok Live. Joining us now is political strategist Diamond Isinger, who is formerly an advisor for the federal Liberal government. Diamond, so nice to have you with us again.
Thank you.
So it has been quite the week. What went through your mind when you heard about these so-called secret talks that were happening?
Well, as a British Columbian, I think the comments from the Premier were pretty apt, just in the sense of the autonomy that we should generally have in British Columbia over the economic activity that goes on within our province. It's very interestingly timed with so many things that have happened recently between the just a few days ago, federal and provincial and territorial meeting that the Prime Minister convened with premiers. There was very recently that Softwood Summit in British Columbia.
Yes.
That would have been an opportune moment to perhaps raise a conversation with the BC Premier. It's not as if they haven't recently been in touch, so it's a bit surprising, I suppose.
And that was sort of my first thought. There have been a lot of recent occasions where they would have had a chance to have sort of fulsome discussions, and obviously that wasn't something that was happening behind the scenes that we weren't aware of. We've already got calls coming in, which I'm not surprised on this topic. We'll head now to George in White Rock. Hi, George. George, are you with us? We will just have to move on from George, unfortunately. Diamond, one thing that the Prime Minister did was hold a First Minister's meeting this week with all the provincial and territorial premiers. What else do you think they were discussing, if not sort of talking about these sort of nation-building projects?
I'm sure major projects were a primary topic of discussion. We've seen, in fact, just 1 week ago, the Prime Minister was here in British Columbia announcing that 2 more major projects in BC are being fast-tracked and prioritized. And that's another interesting lens through which to look at the possibility of a pipeline crossing through British Columbia. The precarious political balance or consensus that has finally been achieved on those 2 projects, one being LNG and the other being an electrical grid project in the North Coast.
Right.
Those have been done in partnership with First Nations. They have reached some degree of acceptability in those regions, but that balance is at major risk if suddenly we have a new project being forced into or through British Columbia without the consent or the trust of local support.
And we did talk to our political correspondent, Katie Adorosa, on the show last week about this topic, and she had said, perhaps with BC getting these 2 projects, these nation-building projects, she wondered if there was a chance the federal government was sort of trying to ease us into the possibility of accepting the pipeline. So whether or not that play worked will remain to be seen. We do have another call that's come in from Rob in Vancouver. Hi, Rob.
Hi.
Hi, and what are your thoughts on where BC stands on deciding on this project?
Well, I just have a question. I wonder if BC could use the good old notwithstanding clause to pass some kind of law that would help block it if they wanted to. Although I do understand it seems like the federal government has some sort of jurisdiction when it comes to pipelines. So.
All right, Rob, thank you for that. Diamond, what's your response to that?
Oh, I wouldn't profess to be a constitutional law expert here, and especially with the innovative, if you will, uses of the clause in recent times. We've seen Alberta invoke it in the context of kids' pronouns and, other opportunities in their province. So
it is definitely a hot button, and I think a lot of people, when they hear that, see that as a way for the government to sort of bulldoze their rights of what they want. So as well, I'm not an expert on any legal ramifications. We'll get a chat in now with Mark in Revelstoke. Hi, Mark. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to say that I find it sometimes a little bit absurd that the politicians that we elect play political games where really their role, in my opinion, as a voter, is to provide us, the voters, the citizens, the taxpayers, with a couple of assurities. One of them would be education, healthcare, security, and housing. And it seems to me like over the last, 10, 15 years, we've been squabbling, and when I say we, I mean these elected folks that are supposed to represent us, about not having enough. And every time we bring something forward, they shut it down, forgetting that that's what drives our economy and our revenue. And I find it disheartening because my whole life I've spent working hard, paying serious taxes, only to have these politicians play these little games between one another and forgetting about what we're really about here. We're Canada. We do things together. We want to propel our economy forward. We want to assure that my children don't have to inherit a massive debt. And it just seems like that's not what they're interested in. It seems to me that what they're interested in is squabbling about who talked to who without letting them know. And, you know, not to take a tit for tat, there are many, 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 many things that the government does and does not let the public know. I mean, the Cowichan thing is one, for instance. Nobody knew that. So if Eby's talking about being hurt, about not knowing about something, imagine what the rest of the people, let's say in Richmond, I don't want to go off topic, are feeling like.
Right.
So let's get past these political posturing and let's just get something done. Let's pay down this debt. Let's all go to work. Let's provide education. Let's provide health care the way it's supposed to be, the way it was not so long ago. I'm 50
right.
and I remember that.
Mark, I hate to cut you off, but we do want to get some more calls in, and I certainly appreciate your point, and I hear what you're saying, and many have echoed that, calling for a more united Canadian front, and as Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said, saying it's un-Canadian for us to not allow this pipeline to go through. She was actually speaking on Newsnet earlier and was live, and she says she'd like to get pipelines across the country in all directions, and says pipelines to Asian markets are in the national interest. How much do you think that resonates with people outside of BC or even in BC, where we can't just think about our province? We need to, be working together to get this all across Canada.
Yeah, to that point and to the point, one of the several points made by the caller that we just heard from, I think there's such an imperative right now, and there's clearly a priority from the Prime Minister himself to get big things done. We have major project action going on. The Prime Minister just left the UAE, where he secured a major multi-tens of billions of dollars commitment in terms of inbound investment into Canada. So no one can dispute, I think, that right now action is being taken to create economic opportunity in Canada. The question is, who has a say over that? At what point do they get to engage? And I will say, I think even for your average observer of this topic, even if they're not an expert on the dynamics of these major projects, it would track that the British Columbia Premier and that major stakeholders in BC would get to have a voice and a stake in the conversations about a pipeline that comes through a province. I can't think of, for example, a conceivable comparison point where, let's say, a pipeline were going to go through Quebec and that Manitoba and Ontario got to have a say, but not Quebec. Yeah. I mean, the dynamics in our federation are such that I can't fathom that happening in other major provinces in Canada. So it doesn't help the perhaps feeling at times that Western interests are being forgotten about, or more specifically BC.
Right.
Especially with, and we talked about this on your show recently, the softwood lumber challenges in BC right now.
Absolutely.
And the relative prioritization of issues facing sectors that are dominant in central Canada versus that of British Columbia.
Yes, and as we know, Premier Eby has mentioned that feeling of alienation many times. A couple more calls to get in. This one from George in White Rock. He made it back onto the show. Hi, George. Thanks for reconnecting.
I'm here. Thank
Great.
you.
And what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, I've worked in the emergency response field for several decades, and I just recently did a complete review for my own edification, for my own summarizing the information. And what I concluded in my review is that Alberta and the Premier and Pierre Poilievre are not releasing the information about the past history of spills in Alberta. The past history is abysmal. They have a long record of spilling up to around 1 million gallons in one incident, and we're just not getting that information put forward, and that is critical for the public to make an educated assessment of the safety I was surprised that the information about the dangers of Hecate Strait just came out in the news in the last few days. That is old news.
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to the Exxon Valdez days.
Yep.
You know, and so why and the huge thing is the characteristics, the physical chemical characteristics of dilbit, which is the product that Alberta is pushing.
George,
and I'll tell you, it is an environmental hazard.
George, we will have to leave it there. We are very short on time today, and I really appreciate you taking the time with us. And Diamond, I did want to ask, in terms of, we've mentioned in the past the Trans Mountain Pipeline, and we know the government was very opposed to that at times, and now they're saying that perhaps we should increase capacity. We've got a minute left. What do you make of that sort of political flip-flopping?
I don't know if it's necessarily a flip-flop so much as it is a practical reality. The pipeline has moved forward. The federal government intervened in the way that they did. And keep in mind, too, in this whole conversation that's being had right now about the role of Alberta, maybe Premier Moe in Saskatchewan, whatever he's up to here with the feds, there's not actually a concrete proposal on the table. There's not a proponent for it. There's not a route or a map. There's all of these absent details. So risking some of these established projects in British Columbia in favor of a hypothesized future pipeline that perhaps could happen is a very interesting political calculus. And I'll be interested to see how the federal government chooses to proceed, just in the sense that this is one of the earliest tests of the Prime Minister's priority being placed on advancing major projects, the first really major piece of resistance that he may face. And what does that look like in the balancing of different provincial or other interests?
Definitely a lot to unpack, and so great to have you with us. I'm sure we'll check in with you again, Diamond. That is Diamond Isinger. She joined us here in studio. She is a political strategist and a former advisor to the federal Liberal government. And Make the Season Kind is the name of our annual CBC British Columbia fundraiser in support of food banks. And we have a day of special province-wide programming planned, all designed to support the 111 food banks. In a few minutes, I'll tell you how you can make a donation. But right now, here's a story of a man who had to turn to the food bank for help.
Hi, my name's Andy. I've been coming to the food bank since my wife passed away. She had MS for 25 years, and I looked after her as a sole caretaker, that's the word. And anyways, when she passed away, we had some legal issues, and I'd done that. It got really bad for the last 4 years or so, and so I was not in a very good state of mind. So, and I'm also a senior. So, I ended up coming to the food bank, and it's been a huge help to me. And I've got a daughter. She was in university at the time, and she couldn't deal with the stress. Eventually, she ended up moving home. And it just helps us to get through. She's trying to finish her degree, and it just helps us a lot. So I come here once a week, and it's great. The fruits and vegetables are really good. I find that oddly enough, I'm eating a lot healthier than I used to. I've made friends here who are, in various circumstances, immigrants and, a lot of retired people too. What people don't understand is, there's a stigma involved, that people are ashamed to go and ashamed to admit that they go. Because I know some people who go very far away from where they live, so there's no chance of somebody seeing them. That type of thing.
And thank you to Andy for sharing his story. Friday, December the 5th is the CBC British Columbia Day of Special Programming in support of food banks. The campaign is called Make the Season Kind. The donation site is open 24/7 through to the end of December. Just go to cbc.ca/kindbc, where you'll find the Donate Now button. There's a drop-down menu so you can direct your donation to any one of the 111 food banks across BC. Once again, that's cbc.ca/kindbc. /KindBC and click on the Donate Now button, and you will receive your tax receipt within a few hours. You can also donate on your phone by texting KIND to 20222. And we'll be planning a special 3-hour edition of BC Today from noon to 3 on Friday, December 5th, and it will be hosted by Michelle Elliott and Margaret Gallagher. It is 12:30, and it is time for the CBC News with Liam Britton.
Good afternoon. As we've been hearing today, police and conservation officers are on BC's central coast hunting a grizzly bear that attacked a group of children and their teachers yesterday. 3 children and one adult from New Hawk Nation were taken to hospital in Bella Coola and then transferred to Vancouver for treatment. An update from BC's Environment Minister and conservation officers is planned for 2 p.m. from Vancouver. CBC will cover that event, and you can watch it live at cbc.ca/BC. And BC is rallying its political troops to secure high-paying jobs, with Ottawa set to hike defense spending by billions. The provincial government wants 35% of new shipbuilding contracts and has enlisted former Minister of National Defence Harjit Sajjan to help with that push at no cost to taxpayers. And a busy week is in store for pro sports this weekend in Vancouver. The brand new Professional Women's Hockey League team, the Golden Eyes, will play their first ever regular season game, taking on the Seattle Torrent at Pacific Coliseum. And the Whitecaps will play rivals LAFC at BC Place tomorrow in the MLS playoffs. And the Canucks will look to earn some badly needed points when they play the Calgary Flames at Rogers Arena Sunday. And those are your CBC News headlines from Vancouver.
Thank you so much for that, Liam. We're just on a last name basis.
Wow. Cool of you, Amy.
You mean Belle.
Oh, sorry, my bad.
I was going to say, do you have any burning gardening questions around? I think this is the first time you've been here for a Minter Friday.
I guess my question is, how can I sleep at night having killed so many plants?
I sleep just fine. I'll tell you all the tricks after, Liam. Thanks so much.
See ya.
And of course, just around the corner on Friday, December 5th, we will have a full day of special programming to inspire you to be kind to those in need. We'll bring you a special 3-hour edition of BC Today along with North by Northwest. So Michelle will be here, joined by Margaret Gallagher, and we'll have live music and special guests for you. Right outside CBC at 700 Hamilton Street in downtown Vancouver. We'll be on stage on the CBC Plaza, so come on down and join us. It is going to be so much fun. And yes, as I've mentioned, you can donate anytime to the food bank of your choice in BC. Go to cbc.ca/KindBC, and you'll find that Click to Donate Now button. There's a drop-down menu so you can direct your donation to any of the 111 food banks here in BC. That's cbc.ca/KindBC, and you'll receive a tax receipt to your email address within hours of making your donation. And Brian Minter is here with his gardening advice and to take all your questions. As always, he's joining us from Country Garden Limited in Chilliwack. So call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Pound 690 on your cell phone if it is safe to do so. And you can email bctoday@cbc.ca. It is a cold and gloomy day, but Brian, I know you want to talk about ways to brighten things up. Perhaps we can talk about ways to ease Liam's conscience about killing so many plants. But
Okay.
Now, we were talking earlier today about how to brighten up your porch with planters. Why don't we get into that first?
But Amy, a phenomenon like we've never seen before, and it's increasing each year. All demographics and all cultures that we have in our wonderful country are now looking at those bare porch pots where you had annuals looking so good. Now they don't look so good, but you've got the porch pots there. And an innovative idea that happened many years ago is let's take that wet soil and let's put some wonderful, fragrant, beautiful greens in there. They're going to look absolutely amazing all the way through the winter. Now, a couple of benefits of doing that. Number one is it sort of greens and puts life in your patio and on your porch, which looks, you're right, a little drab in the cooler time of year right now. But there's so many different types of greens you could put in there, from the beautiful fir, pine. Douglas fir doesn't do as well, but the true Abies are fabulous. Cedar looks so great as it drapes over the edge. I love the fragrance of white pine. It's so soft and so elegant. And, if you get some of the blue types of fir, which are, to me, noble fir, for example, with that lovely blue color in there, you make this wonderful display, and anybody can do it. And it's not an expensive situation, but you don't stop there. First, we get the greens, and then we start adding a bit of color. One of the things we have available everywhere, even in our gardens, the shrub dogwoods I love, particularly the yellow twig dogwood, the red twig dogwood, which is great. Even wild, we have our osier dogwoods, which are pretty bright and beautiful right now, and things like midwinter fire, sort of an orange and yellow tone. In amongst the greens, they look great. They really do. But you need a little more, and the little more are berries. And right across our country, those beautiful deciduous holly, the ilex berries, so beautiful, bright and vibrant, and they are really cold tolerant in terms of growing them almost right across the country, no problem. But those berries really add to the look. And then, of course, getting some fallen cones and putting in there, and a little creative genius all of us can do. And we talked this morning too, sometimes the missing link, if you can find birch twigs about an inch in diameter, 3 to 4 feet long, 2 or 3 of those, to give you some height in your particular caner. And wow, you've got this amazing thing. And right across the country, all homes are doing it. Even a small patio is nice to be able to have in an apartment building, have that green sitting outside. And of course, they're very hardy. They're going to last. All you have to do is make sure they're kept moist. And it's becoming really a wonderful thing to be able to enjoy. Cities are doing it. Going to the downtowns right now are great. So it's a simple thing, easy to do, shows a little creativity, gives you something to look at and enjoy. And some people are being a little more creative and putting a little bird feeder in there so that if your birds are able to feed. And of course, those berries, the ilex berries, they love those as well. So you're doing many things by doing this. And now's a good time to do it because they'll last not only right through until the Christmas season, but well into January as well, which you can start some of the cold hardy plants. And we'll talk about that in January. But, kind of a fun and wonderful thing and a creative thing to do as well.
Well, and it's so nice to have that to look at when it is so drab and gray like we're seeing today. It's just that little brightness. And I love that creativity. In my neighborhood, I've seen a few people either doing holiday decorations or, a couple of bird feeders, and it's just lovely. Brian, of course.
The funny thing is you go by some homes and if they, oh my gosh, that some people you'd never expect are just doing amazing things out there. So,
I love those,
so
the
I'll
surprise gardeners in your life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't judge. I'm still learning. Of course, we'd love people to call in with their questions and emails. You can call us now, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. We've got Brian Minter here to answer your gardening questions. We'll hop right into the phone lines with Morgan. Hi, Morgan. What is your question for Brian?
Hey, Brian. Thanks for taking the call. I've got a Jack Frost maple. Yeah, I got a Jack Frost maple, about 15 years old, kind of the pride of the yard. And I was having the aphids, and so I put on the Tanglefoot. And I used black tape to keep the Tanglefoot cardboard on.
Good.
And okay, good. But the tree didn't drop its leaves this year, and I was wondering, it got moist. And I wonder if water damaged the cambium layer or something. But bottom line is it didn't drop the leaves this year, and I'm wondering if that was part of the effect.
Yeah, Jack Frost, that's one of the newer varieties. I'm glad you've got that one. But is it in the ground, Morgan, or in a container?
No, it's in the ground.
In the ground, good. Okay, but otherwise, everything seems to be fine. The leaves are still there, and depending on where we live, Morgan, some leaves on some Japanese maples, for example, the peeling bark maple, Acer griseum, leaves are full on right now. They're still really great. So depending on the variety, a lot of them have lost depending on where we have our tree, but some are still on. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. But what is your main issue with the worry about the Jack Frost maple?
Well, it's actually the leaves actually died on the tree. They're
okay.
Yeah, they've lost. Yeah, this was probably a month and a half ago, and they're still on, but they died. Not like turning a beautiful color and then falling off naturally. They're stuck on there as hard as can be and just dried up and dead.